Funding for This Is Nashville comes from you, our listeners, and Music City Prep Clinic, Nashville-based provider for PrEP and offering comprehensive sexual health services in an environment designed to be safe, professional, and shame-free. Learn more at musiccityprep.org.
I'm Blake Farmer, and this is Nashville. Music City is home to much more than country music, and one of the genres that certainly claims Nashville as its home is contemporary Christian music. We'll learn on today's show that it's tricky to call it a genre because it's not so much style that separates it from other genres, but substance. Also, we'll look at what you may not know about the rise and resurgence of Christian music and the significance of merging gospel and Christian music in a new museum that opened downtown this month, is open right now. This isn't just an episode about how we got Amy Grant and DC Talk. We're going back to songbook publishing, hymnals, and bringing it full circle to this moment when worship music is what's topping the charts. Our guide, or one of them, is WPLN senior music writer Julie Hight, herself a Vanderbilt Divinity School trained scholar and a kid who listened to a lot of music that built CCM, contemporary Christian music, into what it is today. Welcome back to This Is Nashville.
Thank you, Blake.
And on the line from Portland Seminary is Leah Payne, a religious historian who put out a comprehensive history of Christian music last year called God Gave Rock and Roll to You. Welcome to the show, Leah.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
And we're streaming video from the studio at youtube.com/@WPLN. It's a good place to offer a comment in the chat or just say hello to our guest this hour. And then there are many more waiting in the wings. Julie, so you've written about the worlds of Christian and gospel music over the course of your career quite a bit. What is so special about how Leah lays out the history of contemporary Christian music in her book?
You know, we were classmates at Vanderbilt Divinity School, Leah and I.
We were.
So, yes. And I've read the literature. You know, I've read all of these books that preceded hers, and most of them were written by people who are part of that world, writing for an audience that was also, you know, people who were invested in that world. So they were talking more about, you know, how should this be working? What are the standards we should aspire to, and kind of affirming the worth of what they do. And Leah has just given us this tremendous gift of doing so much comprehensive research and taking it all the way back to this origin point that can really help us understand what was baked into the identity of the many forms of gospel music and Christian music, and just interpreting for us how it has worked, and even pointing out something that really resonated with my experience, that the kind of, you know, standard that the industry, at least at a certain point in time, was trying to meet was that of the evangelical suburban mom who was choosing wholesome music for her kids.
Yeah, Leah, I actually watched a bit of an interview that you gave that talked a lot about that, and about one of the troubles with contemporary Christian music sometimes was that you know, pop music is often, you know, popular because kids listen to it to rebel from their moms, and then in this case, a lot of times it's like moms picking out the music for their kids. But you've written, or often people talk about the origins of contemporary Christian music, like in the 70s or 80s, and you start way earlier, before even the era of commercial music recording, the days of religious songbook publishing. Is there really a direct line between songbook publishing and where contemporary Christian music is now?
You know, there is. And one of the things when I first started working on this book, and I should say that it's been really fun to reconnect with Julie Hight, who was always brilliant and still is, even from our Vanderbilt Divinity School days. But I read about this in the book. I worked for Charlie Peacock, who is a legendary artist slash musician slash writer slash thinker slash producer, who has really shaped contemporary Christian music. Early on, when I was looking at contemporary Christian music as a religion scholar, because I am a religious studies person, not a music critic, as Julie was mentioning, I when I started interviewing musicians and record executives and stuff, they talked about a really specific articulation of Christianity that was kind of the guardrails content wise of what became contemporary Christian music. And if you look at the people who created contemporary Christian music labels, you see actually a direct line to a generation earlier, actually maybe a couple of generations earlier. One example of that is in 1897, this couple of John T. Benson and his wife Ava Green Benson went to a revival meeting in Nashville, Tennessee, and they had a kind of classic revival response, and they responded to their conversion into what became the Nazarene movement, by creating songbooks. And if you know anything about contemporary Christian music, you know that Benson is a huge name in what we call CCM, and that started from a couple of people in Nashville who went to a revival meeting. So those songbooks, they really represent when holiness and Pentecostal people in the South, when they had access to getting their songs out there in the world. Before the late 19th century, it was too expensive for kind of average middle class people to get their songs out there. So a lot of Southern music didn't have a national audience. But in that time, especially in Nashville, it was possible. And so those songs and the people who created those songs, their ideas about God and about the world really set the train tracks that became contemporary Christian music.
Wow. Well, you talk about John T. Benson, who I don't know enough about, who was Nazarene, but I'm thinking of, the Southern Baptists, who certainly did their publishing here, the Methodists, who did the National Baptist, Boyd Publishing, that built their publishing operations here. Were they all kind of part of the reason, the origins of the Christian music industry here?
Absolutely. One of the fascinating findings, because I analyzed the charts of contemporary Christian music from the 1970s on to the present day, really, or till a couple of years ago when I stopped writing the book. And a surprisingly small group of people produced the overwhelming majority of contemporary Christian music and songbooks. And they were either Baptists, so oftentimes Southern Baptists, and these are predominantly white communities. So Southern Baptists, holiness people, so Nazarenes, and then Pentecostal folks. And before the 1800s, most church music that had like national distribution was produced in historic Northeastern print publishing hubs, like in New York or in Philadelphia. But in the 19th century, all of a sudden, these Southern Baptists, holiness people, and Pentecostal people had access to print publishing. And so they started publishing their music, and the ideas that were embedded in their music took off. And mostly that was through song. So you could have people in Presbyterian denominations all of a sudden starting to sing about Pentecostal ideas. And it turns out, and I'm not the first person to say this, Billy Graham said it a lot earlier than I did, but music is very formative. So a lot of times the ideas that were in those communities were imported or exported through the music that they sang.
Yeah, and through the printing presses, I guess, that were a lot of them here in Nashville. If you're just joining us, I'm Blake Farmer. This is Nashville. We're getting a better understanding of our Christian music heritage with Leah Payne, a professor, historian, and author, also joined by WPLN senior music writer Julie Hight. It's all connected to the first ever Christian and Gospel Music Museum that opened this month downtown, and we'll talk to folks who put that together later in the show. We've got the executive director and an artist and the head of the Gospel Music Association coming up. I want to talk about how cultural identity kind of got baked into gospel music to the point that you had what people call gospel music and you had Southern gospel music, which is to say primarily black and primarily white music. Let's take a quick listen. Same classic song, first in gospel style.
Religion, give me that hope.
All right, so that's gospel music, primarily a black style, and now Southern gospel.
Hallelujah, good enough for me.
See, that is an old song. Those are slightly more, I mean, this is obviously the more modern era of electrified instruments, but that first version that you heard, that was the Mighty Clouds of Joy, a group with Southern roots, but that was based on the West Coast. And then the second group was the Blackwood Singers, a group that evolved out of one of the early Southern gospel quartets, the Blackwood Brothers. And so you can hear the same material, and you can certainly hear how the Blackwood version, I mean, that's a group that moved to Memphis and really, really absorbed a lot from Black musical traditions in Memphis. So you can hear that they were getting that showmanship of the bass singer and the improvisation, the call and response, and they were swinging.
Yes, swinging, and yet not the same as the other style. Leah, gospel and Southern gospel are stylistically distinct genres. What made way for Christian music, though, that sounded more like secular pop music to emerge, kind of moving away from things that might be sung on a Sunday morning?
That's a great question. And I love that you all used old time religion, because I write about it in the book as a really clear-cut example of white Southern gospel tastes appropriating music that originated in African American communities. Another Nashville connection, actually, old time religion was popularized by the Fisk Jubilee Singers, and then tweaked to suit white Southern gospel or white revivalist tastes. Contemporary Christian music as a genre, in the sense that most people are familiar with it, I think the origins for that really come from responses to rock music in the 1950s. And I write about rock and roll as coming out of one of the major tributaries of rock is Black and white Pentecostal communities in the South. And for many white Americans, anti-rock sentiment was a kind of proxy conversation to talk about civil rights and enfranchisement. And so a lot of anti-rock sentiment was laden with anti-Black racism. But the idea that wouldn't go away was that young people really liked rock music. So even though there were rock bands and there were predominantly white church organizations that tried to create music that would compete with rock and roll. So there were lots of vocal ensembles, jazz ensembles, folk music. There was something about rock that young people just really liked. And, of course, if you have an adolescent in your life, the number one way to get them interested in something is to tell them they shouldn't be interested in something. So a lot of times rock bands did not work. So the conservative, predominantly white evangelical communities that had created generations of music that was aimed at shaping their faith communities, especially the young, they eventually found on the West Coast a group of hippieized Christians that had these sort of wild, ecstatic experiences with God in a movement known as the Jesus movement. And there were a bunch of young people who were creating music for other young people. And conservative revivalists like Billy Graham and many others saw in that rock music that they were producing an opportunity to create music that would appeal to young people, but that would also be aligned with the church communities that were trying to make sure that their young people were staying within the boundaries of evangelicalism. And so what became contemporary Christian music is born from these evangelical activists and media makers, and then these hippies on the West Coast who had this wild experience, very fascinating spiritual experiences. And in the 1970s, late 1970s, and then throughout the rest of the century, they created what we now know as contemporary Christian music.
Well, how common would this be, Julie, that you've got folks who they're listening to contemporary Christian music because mom said don't listen to something else?
I mean, at a certain point in time, that was a very widespread experience for evangelical youth, and something that was really prevalent in youth group culture. I mean, the picture that Leah paints in her book of the white evangelical suburban mom making those kinds of selections and going to the Christian bookstore to buy music for her kids or bringing them with her. I lived that experience in the youth group experience. And, and I played in really bad, played drums in really bad church bands and those are stories for another time, the things that I did in that era. But that was that was a very prevalent thing, I think, particularly for several decades there. And just, going to youth camps and festivals that were really aimed at young audiences that had a lot of varieties, many flavors of Christian rock and pop.
Yeah. Well, Leah,
including ska and punk.
Ska and punk. We're going to have to dedicate a whole show to those.
Let's do it.
Leah, before we have to lose you, I just wanted to get your take on one thing. You've brought us not exactly to the present, but to where there is this industry that starts really developing in Nashville. I know I've heard you kind of say your takeaway from writing your book is that if there is a takeaway in the history of Christian music, it's that perhaps you can't serve two masters. What do you mean by that?
Oh, wow. I don't know what interview you listened to, but yes, I was pressed in an interview to make like a theological pronouncement or a finding.
Danger.
I was nervous about it because I'm not a theologian. I'm a historian. And so I thought. And I think one of the hard lessons that some of the church people who produce contemporary Christian music learned over time was that if you think that you can use the marketplace to as a way of promoting specific Christian aims, oftentimes you end up being surprised by shifts in the marketplace that are out of your control. So the major governing body of contemporary Christian music, and in fact almost every other aspect of American lives, is the marketplace, because we live in a market-driven society. And so oftentimes there were church leaders who felt that, or they were optimistic about their ability to wield the marketplace to their theological aims. And lo and behold, someone would come along, or a community would come along with different ideas about that. And so, yes, it's very difficult to serve God and money, I think. But I'm not the first person who said that, of course. Nashville listeners will know that was Jesus.
Yeah.
So.
Well, we'll leave it in the words of Jesus. And Leah Payne is author of God Gave You Rock and Roll and a professor at Portland Seminary. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a delight. And hello, Julie. Great to see you.
All right. Well, Julie's going to stay with us as we bring in a Dove Award-winning artist, talk about her experience navigating some of the unwritten rules of Christian music today, and the head of the association that hands out the Dove Awards, who's managed to merge the legacies of gospel and Christian music. Stay with us. This is Nashville.
Funding for This is Nashville comes from you, our listeners, and Music City Prep Clinic, Nashville-based provider for PrEP and offering comprehensive sexual health services in an environment designed to be safe, professional, and shame-free. Learn more at musiccityprep.org.
I'm Blake Farmer, and this is Nashville. The Gospel Music Association sits at the center of the Christian music industry. This is the group that honors artists with Dove Awards, which have become a mark of success in this industry that's grown up in Nashville. The Dove Awards were held earlier this month as a sign of the resurgence of the industry. They were at Bridgestone Arena after years at much smaller venues like at Lipscomb University. And performances weren't just from CeCe Winans and Stephen Curtis Chapman. It was Jelly Roll, John Batiste, Carrie Underwood all stepped up to a mic. The Dove Awards are this mark of success, and Contemporary Gospel Song of the Year went to Doe for Holy Hands. Let's listen to just a bit of that.
You gave me your spirit and it ain't me, yeah. Now when I see me, I look like my Father. You made me, hey, you made me, yeah. And I'm lifting up thee.
And the artist Doe is not singing live in the studio with us, but she is here to talk about her artistic journey. Welcome so much to This Is Nashville.
Thank you so much for having me.
Don't make me sing, she says. We're also honored to have Jackie Patillo, president of the Gospel Music Association for the last 15 years. Welcome.
Thank you. It's the longest I've ever had a job.
Well, I think it says something. And Julie Hight's still with us to put some of this in perspective. We're also streaming video from the studio at youtube.com/@WPLN. If you want to just say hello to Doe, good place to do it. Jackie, you've worked on all sides of CCM and gospel. My understanding is a lot of your work when you took over 15 years ago was to kind of bring everyone together. Why was that important?
Well, God has a diverse kingdom. And there are so many different styles of Christian and gospel music. And we at the GMA, we're responsible to represent them all. So when I first got the job and the industry was not doing well overall, and I asked the Lord, so is the Dove Awards worth fighting for?
Oh.
And he gave me a scripture in Matthew that said that we are to let our light so shine before men so they will see our good works and glorify the Father in heaven.
Oh, and you're saying that the Dove Awards themselves are the thing that sort of shines the light.
That's right.
Wow. And when you say it wasn't doing well, what was going on then? Would this have been in that, I mean, obviously it's always evolving these days, but like at the beginning of when people aren't going to be buying CDs anymore. This is all going to be about streaming music, that kind of thing.
The whole industry, they say when mainstream gets a cold, us niches, we get pneumonia.
Oh.
And so, yes, they were still trying to figure out how to monetize streaming. And fortunately, things are doing better.
All right, well, we're going to get to that. Doe, you're a solo artist now. I don't know if you use the word solo, but you came
That's
up
fine.
in a family band, right? So you kind of touched on all these traditions that make up Christian and gospel music. How have you seen that lane change for you over that time?
Can you rephrase that question?
Well, what I mean, it sounds like Jackie kind of came in and was like, "Well, listen, we're the kingdom is diverse. We're all kind of fitting under this tent." Did you feel like there was one lane for you that was maybe in gospel music, or you had to you're going to transfer over to this, or am I just trying to cross over, that kind of thing?
Because I wasn't raised to listen to a defined genre, I listened to all Christian music. I think. The way that I say it is two songs may not know each other within someone else, but within me, they've been having conversations from all of these different genres. And so, when I came here, it did feel like, well, where does she fit? But as I was having a conversation with someone yesterday, and they were just saying, these genres reach out to you when they hear their music. And so these genres encountered me and reached out to me as I was platformed and as my music was being heard. I found myself kind of in, they placed me in the lanes that worked.
You're like, whatever.
And people responded.
This is my music. You can call it a lane.
That's all I can do is be myself. Yeah.
Do you? What kind of music did you grow up on?
I grew up listening to, Crystal Lewis was one of my favorites. I remember listening to Selah and Avalon. I remember listening to Karen Clark and Kiara Sheard. I remember when she first came out and she went by Kiki. Andre Crouch, Israel Houghton, all of those things are in here. And,
so did you have this experience, though, Julie was talking about being pretty common, where it was like, you're not going to be listening to that music, but here's where you can listen.
Yeah. It was like that. I grew up in a Christian home, and my parents were very strict, so they didn't let me listen to mainstream. But when I was riding the bus, shoo-doo-doo, you know what I mean? Mariah Carey was playing over, and Lauryn Hill, and I remember when India.Arie was on Oprah, and I just soaked it up when I could, you know? So yeah, I did have that experience. But music finds a way to reach you where you are.
Wow, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Jackie, Christian artists seem to really struggle with that transition, but you talked about sort of eventually finding, your way out of the pneumonia that was caught. What was the secret? How did you help get the industry back on track?
By showcasing all of the amazing talent that in serving the Christian and gospel music community. It all comes down to a song. We're in Nashville, right? And these amazing artists like Joe and Stephen Curtis Chapman or Amy Grant or name it, their authenticity, their calling, their commitment to sharing the message through music is what continues to grow the genre.
Julie Hight, in your research and reporting, what factors have you seen that seem to have given the industry a boost?
I think, we were talking about the rise of praise and worship as a real factor. I mean, when I think back to the 2000s, I saw maybe less of an impetus for kids growing up in Christian households. I mean, weren't necessarily being told as much like you need to listen to this kind of music or that kind of music, and budding musicians themselves. I saw musicians from evangelical backgrounds starting bands like Mumford & Sons that were, bringing uplift to just whoever, a mainstream audience. And that was when I really saw praise and worship, which had always been, we were talking about the beginning of songbook publishing, that kind of thing. I mean, that is a specific use of, it has a home in congregational settings or in camp settings or conferences or that kind of thing. So it was coming to the forefront. And then, there are all these younger artists that, like in all genre spaces, are figuring out how to find people on TikTok, so there are stars like that, like Forrest Frank, and there are, we've seen artists begin in a worship setting. Someone like Brandon Lake, who also won Dove Awards this month, who started leading music in a South Carolina congregation and then has worked with some of the biggest, groups doing worship music like Maverick City, and then has a song with Jelly Roll, the reach of that kind of stuff. And I think also embracing artists who sing in Spanish and Spanish-speaking audiences. That is a massive audience around the globe and in the United States.
Well, Doe, in prepping for this, I ran across a song. I was like, I think this is in Spanish. And it was. I assume that was you singing.
Yes, it was not AI. It was me.
Well, you never know
Singing,
right
you
now.
Don't need AI.
I know, right?
You don't need AI.
No, I'm just thankful for, I'm thankful for people like Jackie and my label who will make room for what is coming up, like it needs to be platformed, the new sounds. And they've done that with Latin music. And I grew up in a bilingual church. My dad preached with an interpreter and we sang in Spanish and English, and I was really rusty. But, they were like, let's tap into that because people want to hear it. And I was thankful for that.
Is there, not to say that you're making a business decision when you write songs, but is there some thinking like, hey, this is probably good for us to write songs that could be used on Sunday mornings?
Writing for me is a sacred thing. It's a sacred communal act, and so I try my hardest not to think in a business way when I'm receiving the song. But I think after it's all said and done, because when you're writing for an album, you may write with people and write like 100 songs. Then you kind of pick and choose. But I do feel called to write a whole album for corporate worship spaces. And that's probably more so where I set the direction of writing. Yeah. And so right now I am writing, and I feel this weighty conviction because we're putting words in people's mouths to have a vertical conversation with God and with each other. So I feel the weight of that.
Wow. If you're just joining us, I'm Blake Farmer. This is Nashville. We're joined by Doe, a singer and songwriter, recent Dove Award winner, and Jackie Patillo of the Gospel Music Association. And WPLN's Julie Hight is right here by my side as we explore the rise and resurgence of Christian music. Jackie, how would you like to see the industry continue to kind of adapt and make room for the new directions that people are taking?
Well, I say there's a sound for every season. And for up-and-coming artists to take the liberty to not just be authentic, but to be innovative. And that's what we're seeing. We're seeing innovation, and I think that we're going to continue to see creativity lead the way.
Yeah, it seems like you have a tricky job of deciding what that. It's like, how do you honor, even if you're just talking about the Dove Awards, like how do you make sure you recognize all that's being done? How do you manage that? Who decides?
We have 40 categories.
Wow.
And more to come, I'm guessing.
We're trying not to add any more.
Have you needed to put some away because they're actually not relevant anymore? Categories?
No. Not yet. We still, along with our Artist of the Year and Songwriter of the Year and Song of the Years and all of those, we actually air 10 categories on the Dove Awards. And the other 30, we do a pre-telecast.
I see.
So we honor all of the people.
Well,
and it is a balloting process. So it's quite an undertaking.
I'm sure. Well, the Dove Awards returned to Bridgestone this year because it was at Bridgestone
years
ago. Right. I don't know if it was called Bridgestone then, but you were at smaller venues for a while. How significant is that? This sort of return to a place that seats 15,000 people. What does it say about the industry?
Well, we were selling out when we were at the Allen Arena, which
at
held,
Lipscomb.
At Lipscomb, that held 3,200 people.
Yeah,
we were selling out 2 months prior, and so it was that was made it evident that we had to grow. And believe it or not, there are not a lot of 6,000 seat. Well, there's only one 6,000 seat venue.
Like
Nashville.
a sort of a midpoint between those.
Which we would have loved to have just, creeped our way to Bridgestone. But it didn't work that way.
Take the leap,
We took the leap, and it was worth the effort. It was worth all the new things we had to learn.
Yeah.
And we had great partnership with TPR, and we did a lot of
TPR, I'm sorry.
TPR is a concert promoter.
I see. Well, we're going to head downtown, actually, but we do need to take one more break. When we return, we're going to tour the new museum that's right there, not too far from Bridgestone Arena, the Museum of Christian and Gospel Music downtown, which gives the Gospel Music Hall of Fame a physical home for the first time and tells a much more detailed version of the story than even we're tracking today. So stay with us. This is Nashville.
Funding for This is Nashville comes from you, our listeners, and Music City Prep Clinic, Nashville-based provider for PrEP and offering comprehensive sexual health services in an environment designed to be safe, professional, and shame-free. Learn more at musiccityprep.org.
I'm Blake Farmer, and this is Nashville. There's been a Gospel Music Hall of Fame for more than half a century, but it's practically lived in a cardboard box until now. This month, the Museum of Christian and Gospel Music opened in the heart of downtown, a block off Broadway by the Ryman Auditorium. WPLN's Julie Hight, who's been our guide through this hour on the rise and recent resurgence of Christian music, went on an early visit to the museum. Let's listen.
The first artifact visitors encounter is a trophy, the Songwriter of the Year honor given to Bill Gaither at the first Dove Awards ceremony in 1969.
The winner is Mr. Bill Gaither.
Gaither is known for composing Southern gospel standards that proclaim faith in a saving God and take sentimental comfort in it.
Because he lives, I can face tomorrow.
The museum also highlights pivotal singers, composers, and choir directors of gospel music. That culturally and musically distinct tradition influenced the feel of so much American music and soundtracked the civil rights movement.
I've come too far from where I started from.
Gospel music from the Negro spiritual till now has always been a semblance of hope.
Derek Minor should know. His mom had him singing those songs in the church choir until he insisted on rapping instead.
There was always an idea that God was coming back to liberate. The OG gospel artists, I don't think they were just trying to write great songs. They were trying to inspire people that were at their lowest.
Just across the hall, Minor's featured in an exhibit on Christian hip-hop.
I remember when I wrote my album, The Trap, people were like, a Christian artist is writing an album about the trap. But I'm like, that is where we at. There's a liberation that needs to happen in that moment as well.
The museum dwells in a period in the 70s and 80s when Christian versions of all sorts of secular styles began to catch on. One of the largest artifacts is a rectangular hunk of vintage recording gear under glass in the rear gallery. It came as a surprise to Brown Bannister, the engineer and producer who used it to help flesh out the sound of contemporary Christian pop.
When I saw this in here, my heart just stopped. This was the first 5 years of my career, was on this console. We did the B.J. Thomas thing.
Without a doubt, I finally found out.
I produced Amy Grant's first album. We did Imperials.
I had no love to call my own.
Bannister shaped seminal soft rocking albums for Amy Grant and other Christian singer-songwriters with a specific goal.
To me, Christian music, it's not about the music, it's about the lyric. That's what differentiates.
Thy word is a lamp unto my feet.
You're making sure that you're serving the artist and serving the lyrics of their song and trying not to get in the way of the message, trying to enhance it.
That's what he's done. I believe I'm going to go ahead and testify.
And that was an excerpt from a story Julie Hight did for Weekend Edition Sunday on NPR that aired on Sunday. An appropriate day for this, even though the Gospel Music Association, I believe that this new museum is closed on Sundays also appropriately. But joining us to end the hour on Nashville's history with gospel and Christian music is Steve Gilreath, Executive Director of this new museum. Welcome to This is Nashville.
Glad to be here. Glad to see you.
And Jackie Patillo of the Gospel Music Association and Doe are still with us. Doe was really wanting to sing with every single song that was in that audio clip, and so if you'd like to hit us with anything, just stop me. Steve, why is having a museum important when you're talking about a genre like this?
Well, it's not just one genre. It's Christian music, gospel music are the genres, but within that, there's country and there's rap and there's rock and there's all of those.
As we just heard, yeah.
Right. There's no one museum anywhere in the country that includes all of those in one space.
Well, and there are these separate institutions devoted. I think there's a Black Gospel Museum, maybe St. Louis, White Southern Gospel in Pigeon Forge. So what's different about your bigger tent that you've got downtown?
Well, I think the Gospel Music Association is here in Nashville.
Yeah.
And they're the big tent that unites the entire industry. So it was logical when you look at them being here and the music industry being based here to include the museum right down the street, right downtown.
Yeah.
So.
Jackie, there's been this the Hall of Fame for like 50 years. And I guess a lot of times people think of a Hall of Fame going along with some sort of museum. What took so long to get the museum piece there?
Well, that's a big question.
I bet.
Because they had attempted several times, and it was for such a time as this. And
stars aligned or something?
That's right. God gave me the vision, and I presented it to the board, and they had the foresight and the courage to press forward. And Zach Wamp, who is the chairman of the GMA Foundation.
Zach Wamp is in the former congressman?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. So he was one of our trailblazers for sure, and has put a lot of heart and soul and time into getting this museum off the ground. So, yeah, it was timing. It was ready. It was...
Wow.
And we were brave.
If I can make it really human for you, the impact of having a tangible location for a Hall of Fame, watching the family members of some of those that have passed, or seeing some of the actual Hall members come in, and they can now scroll through bios and look at pictures and watch videos and see those things come back to life and see memorabilia or artifacts from their family members from days gone by. I've been in this industry 35 years. I learned so much from it, and to see those family members just start weeping over that space is amazing, and watch the eyes get wide from people that are learning for the first time. Things that happen have been pretty incredible. Reba Rambo came in this week, who's the daughter of Dottie Rambo. Dottie is in the Hall of Fame, certainly, and Reba celebrated her 74th birthday with us. She came in dressed like royalty, as she is, and was just overwhelmed by all the memories there and all the pictures of her career and her mother's career. And when she got to the Hall of Fame, it was just it was overwhelming.
Wow. If you're just joining us, I'm Blake Farmer. This is Nashville. We're wrapping up this episode on contemporary Christian music, which has its first ever museum that houses the Hall of Fame. Opened this month downtown. Is opened as we speak, I think, right?
That's correct.
You've left it, someone else can guard the door for the day.
It's in good hands. It's been open 2 weeks.
See, there you go. Are people just coming in off the street, or is it more an intentional visit right now?
It's a little bit of both. You book tickets online like most museums. You book by the hour, 15-minute increments, and then other people just come in off the street. We have bus tours that are showing up. Some announced yesterday had 36 people from Australia had booked a tour and all came in, and we're a lovely bunch of people. And others that we've now had 2 groups that have come in on their way to the Grand Ole Opry and have heard about us through different media and socials and decided to squeeze in an hour at our museum. And so a bus will pull up and 35 people will jump off and they'll scramble through the museum for 1 hour, which an hour is a really short time in our museum. You want to spend a little more time than that. So it's fun to watch them try to get in there and see everything. And
Doe, it keeps coming up about this word, sort of gospel music or contemporary Christian music, or what do we call it? And I wonder what words you find yourself using to describe this music and your music specifically right now.
Yeah, I love that question because genres are really just different dialects of the language that we use to communicate with people, through music. And so I like to say, I think I was talking with Julie the other day, and I like to say that, I fit into CCM, I fit into gospel, and then there's this other pool that's kind of coming up that's like a neo-soul Christian music. Would you agree, Jackie?
Yeah.
Yeah, and artists are finding their home there. You have artists like Jonathan McReynolds, and he's one of the huge trailblazers in a genre like that. You've got like hip hop. I don't fit in there. Sometimes they ask me to do features and I feel cool, but yeah, so that's how I would describe my music that comes from me.
And by features, this is like singing, like featured on.
Yeah, you just hear my voice come on for a verse and then I'm out because I can't live there. I can only visit.
You can only visit. Yeah.
Did
you do something with Lecrae or someone else recently?
Lecrae is, yes, he's an amazing rap artist, and he said yes to featuring on my song.
Okay.
Yeah, I was trying to be cool, and I needed his stamp of approval, and he said yes. It was really great.
Well, that's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
So Steve, can you talk about how this museum is going to work over time? Like, will there be kind of exhibits added? Is it still kind of being added to? Is there sort of something that'll change out every so often?
That's a lot of questions. So
okay, well,
I'll take them down the road.
Here we go.
So to make the museum interesting, and you just mentioned Lecrae, one concept that we pursued and has turned out beautifully is to video 18 different artists from all these different genres, and Lecrae is one of those, as well as Toby Mac and CeCe Winans and Amy Grant and Bill Gaither. And they are on life-size monitors as you walk through the museum, and they address different issues that you're kind of learning about as you go through there about songwriting and hearing the call of God to get into music and touring, all these different issues. And so the experience is very personal when you go through the museum. It's like you're watching the museum with a really good friend, if one of your good friends was one of the top 18 artists in Christian and gospel music. And so I see those evolving and those bringing in other artists as well that would be involved in those. I do see us having some rotating exhibits. We also have programming where we'll be offering some very exclusive concerts in some of our performance venues. We have 2 performance venues inside, and we'll see where it goes from there. But a museum always changes, always evolves.
Yeah.
So.
Jackie, we've mentioned several times this hour that, it's the lyrics as much as the music that are important. How did that difference, the emphasis on the words, how did those show up? I think I read about almost a prayer booth or a where you can respond to the music? We do have a prayer wall that you can write a prayer and insert it in the prayer wall. But we also have a interactive where a person can give their testimony of a favorite song of theirs and why. And then we have a vocal booth. So you can pick a track and you can sing on it. Really? And then in our songwriting area, we've got, Steve mentioned the board that Chris Christian had donated. We have 2 mini boards right next to them. And you can pick a track and you can mix it yourself. Oh, really? Yeah. So we love that interaction. Love that our visitors can feel the music, experience the nostalgia, feel the atmosphere of faith and hope, and also learn the story. Mm-hmm. One of my favorite stories is right when you enter, we learn how Music City got its name. And it was the Fisk Jubilee Singers who went to London and sang for the Queen. And the Queen said, "You must be from a Music City." Yes. In other words, if you really trace it back, it's essentially, I don't know if they were calling it gospel music, but it was gospel music that gave Music City its name. That's right. And we're right behind the Ryman, which is, the Nashville church. Right. So, I think people forget that sometimes until you realize you're on pews, which is hard to miss anyway. Why was it important to have this responsive moment? Did you just see that there were enough songs that really had been life-changing for people that it just made sense? Yes. And interactive is important. Steve, talk about the children's area.
I will. I think connecting with artists is really important. Our music moves and changes lives, and people really want to connect with artists. So in that testimony part, we'll actually deliver those testimonies to the artist. And with children's area, I'm about to introduce an opportunity for children who have a very different museum experience. They don't go at the same pace. They say, "Can we leave now?" Exactly right. Right. So we have something that we call Nate's Adventure, and they're on their own scavenger hunt to spot a little fish, which is a character that Nate Nolan created. And it's hidden all over the museum. And so they have a little book. They're trying to score those, and they'll chase that. And they also will be able to zap some, with their iPad, some QR codes they find, and they'll get to watch pieces of different videos from Dove Award-winning children's videos. So, well,
Doe is somebody who obviously have much experience in this realm, but now for your community to kind of have a physical place that honors the work, I don't know, any reflections as we're talking about this and what that means for the future of gospel and contemporary Christian?
I love the fact that every genre and cultural musical language is represented under one roof for gospel music. That means so much. So I'm so thankful, so well thought out. People want to respond to what they feel when they hear gospel and Christian music. And you guys have done that for all of the listeners and the people who follow. So thank you so much.
It's an honor.
Amen.
Well, thank you, Doe, for joining us. And thank you to Steve Gilreath and to Jackie Patillo. We hope you'll come back.
You bet.
Well, thank you for tuning in this hour. This is Nashville is a production of Nashville Public Radio. If you missed yesterday's episode, we questioned Nashville's transit future with Sabrina Sussman, who's overseeing how we're spending that half-cent sales tax Davidson County voters approved last year. You can catch up in the podcast feed at thisisnashville.org or ask a smart speaker to play the latest episode. It's that easy. Today's episode was produced by Julie Hight and Josh Deepen, directed by Tasha A.F. Limley. Our board operators, Liv Lombardi. The masterminds behind that theme music are Larange and Namir Blade. The conversation does not have to end now. You can email us, thisisnashville@wpln.org, to tell us what you want to hear on the show. You can also find us on Blue Sky, Instagram, and on X. This is Nashville. I'm Blake Farmer. Go in peace.